Hi, I'm Rob. Today I want to show you the President George FCC CB radio that they sent me to review. I've been looking forward to this one for a little while. I'm not trying to sell you anything here. I like doing these radio reviews just to learn how these radios work, see the new features, and I enjoy making videos and sharing this type of information with you. But if you are interested in buying one, I will of course leave an affiliate link in the video description. So check that out if you're interested. Anyway, let's get this radio on the bench and take a closer look at it. Here's a quick look at everything that comes in the package. First up is a powder-coated metal mounting bracket. We also have a bag of accessories and mounting hardware. Things like mic clips, thumb screws, and even a spare fuse. And speaking of fuses, we also have a fused power cord. I believe this to be 16 gauge wire, and it does have a fuse on the positive line, and it has the standard 3-pin CB radio power connector. We also get a well-written instruction and owner's manual. We get the standard President microphone with a 6-pin circular connector. And we, of course, get the radio itself. On the back of the radio, we've got a pretty chunky heatsink here. Probably overkill for a 4-watt radio, which makes me suspicious that this may somehow be capable of more if somebody were able to figure out how to unlock it. Anyway, we've got the SO239 over here. We've got a Vox jack here, a PA jack here, and an external speaker jack here. And then over in the bottom right, we've got a standard 3-pin power connector. You've probably already noticed I've got the radio on its mobile mounting bracket, and if I remove this thumb screw, you'll see that the radio can be pivoted to 3 different positions on this mobile mounting bracket. Now, let's take a look at how the features and functions of this radio actually work. Some of the more complicated features like CTCSS programming, I'll save for a separate dedicated video. So if you need to see that detail, check for a video link in the description below. So we might as well start with the basics. If I turn the radio on, you can see that the LCD screen briefly shows US, meaning that this is a US spec radio. And then below that, we saw that the radio is currently set to use an electret microphone. We'll talk more about that later. As I mentioned earlier, the inner ring of this control is the squelch. Turning the control all the way counterclockwise engages the automatic squelch, where sort of the background noise threshold is set automatically by the radio. If you want to use manual squelch, you just turn it clockwise until you block out the background noise, and then anything stronger than that level will break the squelch and you'll hear it. This radio is capable of AM, FM, lower sideband, and upper sideband modes. To toggle between them, we just short press the mode button. And when I do that, you can see that the indicator up here at the top of the LCD changes to let us know what mode we're in. Long pressing the button will put the radio into PA mode, and you can see that by the blinking PA indicator up here. And of course, for PA mode to work, we need an external PA speaker plugged into the back of the radio. A second long press of the mode button takes the radio out of PA mode and back to normal mode. The mem button puts the radio into memory mode, but in order for that to be useful, we have to first program some memory channels in. And we can program up to 4 memory channels that are recalled by pressing one of these buttons, and you can see each one of these is labeled M1, M2, M3, and M4. Now first I'm going to set the radio to the channel and mode that I want to save into a particular memory channel. And let's just assume we want to program channel 30 in AM mode to memory channel 1. So I'll first short press the memory key, and we can see that mem shows up on the LCD right here. Now if I want to write that into the memory 1 slot, I'll push and hold the button underneath the M1, which in this case is the mode button. After about a second, you probably noticed the LCD screen changed and a little M1 appeared over here. And that means this is now written into M1. So now let's say I want to program channel 37 lower sideband into memory slot 2. I've tuned that in on the radio. I'll short press the memory button, and then I'll push and hold it again to write it into the memory 2 slot. So now if I turn the channel control, you can see that the M is now missing and the radio is working like normal. If I want to recall one of those memory channels, I short press the memory button and then short press one of the 4 buttons that the memories are stored into. So in this case, we'll pull up memory 1. And you can see we go back to channel 30 AM mode, and M1 is lit up here. If we want to look at M2, short press Mem, press it again, and M2 appears, and we're on 37 lower sideband. Now you can see that this button is also labeled CTCSS/DCS, and we'll talk about that feature a little bit later in the video. I'm going to skip it for now because it's a little bit complex and really only works in the FM mode anyway. The next button is labeled Scan/DW, and short pressing that button puts the radio into scan mode. And whenever a signal that is stronger than the squelch setting, whether it's manual or automatic, is detected, the radio will stop scanning. Once the signal drops below the squelch threshold, or the squelch is turned up, the radio will start scanning again 3 seconds later. This radio also has the ability to skip certain channels in the scan if you want to do that. So for instance, if we wanted to skip channel 37 in the scan, while in scan mode, you can see scan is blinking up here, I'll push and hold the scan button. And now channel 37 is skipped from the scan and will never stop on that channel again. If we exit scan mode by short pressing the button and then turning the channel control, we can see that SK blinks next to channel 37 to let us know that it's marked as a skipped channel in the scan. If I want to remove a channel from the scan skip, it's a little more involved, but what I have to do is push and hold the channel control to get into the menu system, and then I use the channel control to find the scan skip setting. You can see right now it's turned on. Push this in again and toggle it to off. Push it again, and then if I wait a few seconds, this will clear and we'll go back into normal mode, and you'll see that the scan skip is now off. And you can see now that we're in normal operation, the SK is missing over here, which means that the scan skip is turned off for this channel. Now by default, the radio scans from low channels to high. If you want to change the direction of that, you can just toggle the channel control to the left and it'll scan down instead of up. And again, if you want to change the direction, just turn it right and it'll start to scan up. Changing the scan direction can also be achieved by pushing the up-down buttons on the microphone. The radio also has a dual watch function, and that allows you to keep an ear on one channel while listening to another. So for instance, right now we're on channel 36. If I push the F key up here, and then the scan button, which is also labeled DW for dual watch, you can see the radio now toggles between the 2 channels. And if a signal was received on channel 9, it would stop there and let us hear it. And you can see when the radio is in dual watch mode, the DW appears next to the channel number. Now, when the radio is in dual watch mode, if I use the channel control, it only cycles between those 2 channels. So I need to cancel that in order to sort of resume normal operation of the radio. If I want to cancel the dual watch mode, I can just push the PTT switch, and you can see the DW disappears, and the radio is back in normal mode. The next button controls the automatic noise limiter, noise blanker, and high cut filters for the receiver. Now you can see right now, and for most of this demo, the ANL and NB have been displayed up here, meaning that those have both been on. To turn them off, we just cycle through and short press the button. You can see right now both are off. Right now automatic noise limiter is just on. Right now just noise blanker, and right now both. If I want to turn on the high cut filter, I push and hold the button, and then high cut is displayed up here, letting us know it's on. And if I want to shut that off, just push and hold the button and it goes away. One thing to keep in mind is that the automatic noise limiter is only available in AM mode. So if I toggle to FM, you can see ANL disappears, and no matter what I do with this button, I can't turn it back on. I can only use noise blanker and the high cut in FM, lower sideband, and upper sideband. Next, we've got the EMG or emergency button. Short pressing this toggles between the 2 emergency channels, which can be programmed, but you can see by default they're set to channel 9 and channel 19, and then another short press brings us back to normal. We'll talk about how to program those later in the video when we cover the menu functions hidden under the channel control. The EMG button also controls the RF gain and mic gain. In order to change the RF gain while in receive mode, I push and hold this button, And then you can see that the radio now displays RF gain right here, and there is a 10 letting us know that it's at maximum gain. If I turn the control, you can see that this level indicator goes down along with the indicator to let us know that the RF gain is reduced. If I want to change the mic gain, I have to first key the radio by pushing the PTT switch on the microphone, and then I short press the mic gain key, and you can see that mic gain is displayed on the screen. And then if I use the channel control, the mic gain is turned up and down just like the RF gain was. The last button on the right is the monitor button, and this is basically just an override for the squelch. Now right now you can't hear anything coming through, even though there's some pretty strong signals, because I've got the squelch turned pretty much all the way up. If I push the monitor button, you can hear that the receiver now is working, and then down here briefly it said monitor on. If I want to restore normal operation, I just push the button again, and it goes back to whatever squelch mode was set, either manual or automatic. Now you can see the secondary function for the monitor button is labeled call. In order for that to work, we first key up the radio, and then if I push the call button, while I push the call button, a tone is generated and transmitted. I've got another radio turned on in the background. I'll turn up the volume so you can hear what that sounds like. The call tone frequency can be changed by going into the menu system. And then if I scroll around and find the call set feature, now right now it's set to 1340, which is 1340 kilohertz. To change it, I just short press on the channel control, and you can see that right now the 4 is blinking. And that means I use the channel control and I can kind of toggle up through that register. If I want to make a more drastic change, I can push this again, and then I can change these numbers. And I can press it again, and I can go all the way up to somewhere around 3 kilohertz. So let's just take that as our value. I'm going to exit the menu by pushing the PTT switch, and now I'm going to transmit and let you listen to what the call tone sounds like at 3 kilohertz. Now we can take a look at the buttons along the right side. The first button, labeled TB, turns the talkback on and off. Right now it's off. When I turn it on, you can see this LED lights up red to let us know it's on. And then when I transmit, I can just turn the channel control to set the level. You can see the lowest is 1 and the highest is 9. And you can see while I'm changing the level, talkback is displayed down here and the number blinks. Testing the talkback level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The next button over here labeled F lets us activate the functions on these other buttons that are labeled in green, the noise gate and the dual watch. And we've kind of already seen this, but short pressing the F key lights up an F on the screen, and then short pressing the button with the green label enables that feature. Pressing and holding the F key will enable the lock function, and you can see there's a little lock icon up here in the screen. When the radio is in lock mode, we can't accidentally change the channel or change functions by pushing any of these buttons, but we still can key up and talk on the radio if we want to, and things like the clarifier and volume control and squelch will still work when the radio is locked. To unlock the radio, we just long press the F button again, and you can see the little lock icon goes away. The next button is the NRC, or noise reduction circuit. Now you can see for most of the video this has actually been on, and the green LED has been lit, letting us know this is active for receive mode. If I short press the button again, you can see the LED turns red to let us know it's active only in the transmit mode. And then if I short press it again, the LED turns yellow to let us know it's active on transmit and receive, and then pressing it once more turns the function completely off with the LED indicator off as well. Long pressing the NRC button brings us into the menu system and lets us control the NRC settings. So now that we're in that register, I'm going to short press the channel control button, and you can see the RX indicator blinks, and we can toggle between the TX setting and the RX setting. If I short press again, now we can change the level from 1 being the least to 5 being the most. And then for the TX, we can set the same levels between 1 and 5. And then to exit back out, we can just do a quick press on the PTT to get back to normal mode. Now I'll go through a more detailed demo on the noise reduction circuit later in the video. Right now, skip is rolling too much and you really wouldn't get the effect. This radio also has weather alerts, and I can activate that by short pressing the CB/WX button. And then I can just use the channel control to choose which weather channel I want to listen to, 1 through 7. And you can see down here, it even displays the frequency of the channel as we change it. Now, if I want to turn on the weather alert function, I just push and hold the button, and then you can see the LED indicates red to let us know that's on. And you can also see that WX alert is lit up here on the LCD screen. Now, one thing I will caution you about, if you leave this on and forget about it in the background, and a weather alert comes through, it will definitely wake you up, which is what it's supposed to do. But in my case, I usually leave this off so that I don't have a heart attack. Next, as you can see, this radio has Vox control. If I short press the Vox button, you can see it turns it on, and as I talk, just near the microphone, you can see the radio starts to transmit. And the red LED is lit up to let us know that Vox is enabled. You can control the Vox level by long pressing the button, and then it goes into the menu setting to let us set that. When we first go in, you can see Set L is displayed here, and that lets us set the Vox level. But we can also set the Vox anti-trip, which is currently set to off, or the Vox time, which is currently set to 05. To choose the level of any of these three items, I just push in on the channel control and then rotate the channel knob to select whatever level I want to use. Now this button also allows us to turn on and off the noise gate, which is only active during transmit. In order to turn that on, I have to short press the F key and then push on this button, and then you can see the little AG symbol lights up here. Now this noise gate can be useful if you're transmitting in a noisy environment, like a truck going down the highway. It'll help cut out some of that background noise. And then as you might imagine, if you want to turn that off, it's just a short press of the F key and then a short press of the button again to disable it. And you can see the icon goes away as well. Now let's take a look at the settings that are located in the main menu of the radio. And as you've already seen a few times in the video, we just access that by pushing and holding the channel selector. The radio will usually remember the last menu selection that you accessed, but the first time you go into the menu when the radio is new, you'll come to the color selection. Now if I short press the channel selector again, we can go in and choose which color we want. You can see there are a few to choose from. I normally leave my radios on orange when I do the radio review videos because it shows up best in camera. The next option is a dimmer. You can see I've got mine set to 5. But you can actually turn the backlight all the way off at 0 or crank it up to 9 if you want it bright. The next option we can change is the tone, and this really just kind of sets the bass and treble of the received audio. If we crank this all the way up to 5, we get more treble in the audio. If we crank it down to -5, we get a little bit more bass. The next option we can change is the key beep. You can see I've got that off now, but if we turn it on, and then every time you push a key, the radio will beep. The next option we can set is the Roger beep. I'll let you listen to all the available selections. The next menu item, labeled INDIC, stands for indicator, and allows us to change what is displayed on the LCD screen when the radio is in transmit. Now by default it shows the frequency, which is what FR stands for. We can change that to SWR or SR, or we can change it to show the time remaining on our timeout timer. So if we go back into normal CB mode, you can see the frequency is shown down here. And by default, this is what's displayed when you transmit. But now that we've set this to SWR, when I key up, you can see that the SWR reading is now listed right here. If we change it to timeout timer and do the same test, and you can see that it counts down and lets us know how much time is left before we time out the transmission. Just for the sake of completeness, I'll set it back to frequency, and I'll key up, and you can see that frequency is displayed here. The next item is scan mode. By default, it's set to channel mode, which means that when you set the radio into scanning, it scans all the 40 channels, except for any scan skips that you might have programmed in that we talked about earlier. If we change this over to NE, this will actually scan the memory channels that are programmed in here and any of the priority channels that might be programmed as well. Now we've already looked at channel scanning earlier in the video, but now that I've set memory scanning, let's just take a look at that. And you can see that when I enable the scan, it now will scan between the two memory channels that are programmed in and the channel 9 and 19 emergency channels that are also set. The next item that we can change is the scan type. Now by default, it's set to 59 or S9, and what that means is that the radio will stop scanning when it hears a strong signal and then resume scanning a few seconds after that signal goes away. If we change over to T1 mode, the radio will stop scanning when it sees a signal on a channel, and it'll resume 5 seconds later whether or not that signal is still present on the channel. The next item in the menu is the scan skip, and we've already talked about this to some degree earlier in the video, but I'll mention here that if you turn it on, it will set the scan skip for whatever channel you were in when you entered the menu mode. So the next setting deals with the PA modes. The first mode, which is labeled PA, allows us to transmit microphone audio and the received audio of the radio through to the PA speaker. The off mode allows us to only transmit the microphone audio to the PA speaker. When set to off mode, the received audio is muted. If we set the radio to in mode, it allows us to transmit the microphone audio through the PA speaker, but the received audio of the radio will come through the regular speaker inside the radio or an external speaker if you have that plugged in. The next setting allows us to switch between electret microphones, which is what is shipped with this radio, or dynamic style microphones, which might be an older mic that you've got laying around. The next menu mode is the automatic SWR feature. Now I'm not going to cover this in great detail, but if I enter into this mode, you can see that there is a 1.0 showing on the display, and you can hear an audible tone. And what that's actually doing right now is measuring the SWR of the antenna that's connected to the radio, both visually through the LCD screen with the 1.0 measurement and that audible tone that you're hearing. Because we have more or less a perfect match, the tone is continuous. The further away we deviate from 1 to 1, the more the tone turns into a series of beeps. And the worse the SWR is, the more space there is between the beeps. And then you can see down here in the corner, this says 5 minutes, which means that this will actually transmit like this for 5 minutes and then time out. Just to demonstrate, I've tuned the radio to a channel where the SWR is not a perfect match. You can see right now it's measuring 1.7. And if I turn the volume up, you can hear that instead of a steady tone, we're now getting a series of beeps. The next menu setting is the NRC level, which we've sort of already seen that we can access through long pressing this button. Since we've already covered this, I'm going to move on to the next menu item. Our next menu item is where we can set the codes, either the CTCSS tone or the digital coded squelch tone. Now, as I said earlier in the video, this is sort of a more complex function and probably requires its own dedicated video. So I'm going to skip that for now, but check the links in the description below for a video on this feature if you want to see it. The next menu item is where we can change the setting of the emergency channels. You can see if we go in, I can choose between setting emergency channel 1 or emergency channel 2. So for example, if I go in and set emergency channel 1, I can then set it to any channel that I want. The next menu item lets us change the channel for the dual watch. Right now it's set to channel 9, but I can change that to anything I want. The next menu item is for the span setting. And this feature is probably more useful on this radio's big brother, the President Washington. But on this radio, it still has some function, so I'll show you what it does. So if we turn it on and then go back into regular mode, if I short press the channel control, you can see that this digit on the frequency display starts to blink. And what that means is I'm sort of changing the frequency register instead of the actual channel number. But because we're in this frequency register, we're pretty much just changing the channel number. However, if I short press the channel button again, you can see this digit flashes. And now we changed the channel by this frequency register. So that can be kind of a fast way to cycle through channels if you want, but other than that, I don't see a lot of use for it here in this version of the radio. Now we've already seen this menu item earlier in the video when we looked at the call feature, and it just sets the frequency of that call tone that the radio emits when this button is pushed while transmitting. The next menu item is a bit of a mystery. I'm not sure that it has a function as of yet, but you can see it's labeled Vol ACC, so probably accessory volume, and we can set that level between 0, 1, and 2. I think this is reserved for future use. The next menu item is SWR protection. Now what this does is help protect the radio against a bad antenna match. So for example, if I were to key up and the radio sensed an SWR higher than 3.0, it wouldn't allow me to transmit. Now we can go in and change this. We can set it as high as 20, or we can set it lower, as low as 2.0. The next menu option is the voltage protection. If the radio detects voltage greater than the setting, it'll give us a warning on the front panel to let us know. Now right now it's set to 16, which is the maximum, but I can turn this down pretty low. I can actually set it as low as 9 volts. Now if we go back into normal mode, you'll see that after a few seconds we will get a battery high warning down here. Now I'm actually going to go back in and set this back to something more reasonable, like 15 volts. And then the last menu item allows us to do a factory reset. Now we can choose to reset everything by leaving it on the all setting, or we can just reset the scanned and saved channel settings by switching to SC. Either way, I'm not going to do this right now since I don't want to reset my radio. As I mentioned earlier in the video, we just don't have time to deep dive into every feature this radio offers. But I do want to take a few minutes and show you the NRC feature on the receive. I think it works really well on this radio, and it can help you pull some of those signals out of the noise that you might not otherwise be able to hear. Right now I've got the radio set up on lower sideband, and we've got the high cut filter turned on and the noise blanker turned on. But we have the NRC feature turned off. I'm going to turn up the volume and we'll listen to what we're hearing. And then I'll kick on the NRC feature. Now for the first test, I've got the level of the NRC set fairly low. And what that means is that you won't hear too much distortion on the received signal, but you should dramatically hear the background noise drop. So again, I'm going to turn the volume up and we're going to listen to the receive with the NRC off. Again, NRC is off.
It's pretty cool when they give the amount
and now I've turned it on.
Hours of sunshine, daylight, you know.
What I'll do for the next test is start off the NRC at level 1, and then while we're receiving a signal, I'll turn the level slowly up to 5 and let you hear the difference as we go.
The I-205 bridge, which they built back in the mid-70s, and then we have the 205 bridge, and then we have the I-5 bridge, and it's a drawbridge. It goes up so ships can get under it. Well, now they're having a big proposal to rebuild, put another...
So I'll do one more test. I'm going to leave the NRC off. We'll listen for a few seconds, and then I'll turn it back on, engaged at level 3, and we'll hear the difference there.
Somebody breaks down or there's an accident, everything comes to a standstill. When they first built it was 3-lane drawbridge, and that was back in the 50s. And then before the 50s, actually.
Whew, this radio has a ton of features. Now that we're through all that, I want to take a quick look at the transmitter, starting by checking the output power. Now, throughout this video, you may have seen this meter in the background, but I've just found that it's not working right. So we're going to set that one aside and use a different meter for this test. So I've got a dummy load on the back of this meter, and we've currently got it set to the 30-watt forward power mode. So that means we're going to be looking at this bottom scale down here for our power measurements. On AM, we're seeing carrier power of just slightly under 4 watts, which is what it should be. And then when I talk into the microphone, you can see on voice peaks, we're hitting somewhere around 10, 11, maybe up to 12 watts at the most. If I switch over to FM, we are seeing a power level slightly under 4 watts, just like we saw with an empty carrier on AM. And of course, when I talk into the microphone like I'm doing now, the power level doesn't change, and that's the way FM should work. On sideband, of course, when I key the mic, there's no carrier power, which is what we're supposed to see. And when I talk directly into the microphone in a normal voice, we're seeing peaks up around 10 watts or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now just for fun, I've switched the meter into average mode. We'll do the same test on AM, and we're getting the carrier level slightly under 4 watts. And when I talk into the microphone, you can see there's very little meter movement on the averaging scale, maybe going up to about 5 watts or so. And of course, FM is going to be the same as it was before. We're getting that slightly under 4 watt reading with a dead key. And then when I talk into the microphone, there's no change in the power level. And of course, on sideband, a dead key gives us no power. And then when I talk into the microphone, you can see that on the average power setting of the meter, we're seeing peaks maybe up around 5 watts or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next, I want to do a quick transmit test. I've got the President George on the bench hooked up to a dummy load. On the other side of the room, I've got my computer connected up to a software-defined receiver. We'll use that to record the transmission from the President George and hear what it sounds like.
Let's test the President George FCC in AM mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. President George FCC AM mode test. Now let's test the President George FCC in FM mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. President George FCC FM test. Now let's see what the President George FCC sounds like in lower sideband. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
As you may have gathered from the video, I really like the President George FCC radio. I think it's a good balance between all the modern features you'd want in a high-end CB radio, but it's not too complicated to use on a daily basis. One thing to keep in mind is that it's fairly big. It's not going to fit in a modern small car, at least not easily. So if you're thinking of using it mobile, make sure you measure and see if it's going to fit in your application before you purchase one of these. But if you're using it in a base station setup like I'm going to do, then size isn't an issue and it should work out just fine for you as long as you use a decent power supply. Now the radio isn't perfect. Everything has its flaws. But I'm not really finding too many things that would detract me from wanting to buy this radio. Now you may feel differently and that's just fine. To put it bluntly, I don't care whether you buy one or not. But if you do want to buy one or just learn more about it, I will, of course, leave an affiliate link down below. If there's anything else that you'd like to see me cover on this radio, let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.